Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a World Edition. It looks like Mark and Steve aren't here this morning, which is unusual. The good news is Chris will be able to get a word in edgewise.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, Nick. Yeah, it'll
so
be
so
interesting.
we actually get to talk because usually when they're there, talking opportunities become very limited on that point
No,
in
when
time.
Shaquille is there, forget it. We're
No,
done.
Shaquille, we have no opportunity to talk about,
That's right.
so you can forget it.
Yeah.
But they did post the starting time 15 minutes later. I don't know why, but I don't know if you got that. And I think Lee Newton
Oh
Road
no, I
showed up
didn't.
at 10 and no one was there. But
Oh,
it looks like, oh, speaking of which, since the data man's here, we actually get to get a little data going here and see what you got on the screen here, Chris. What do you have?
oh, well, I just have our great and glorious congressional representatives. Their last day, according to the congressional record, was Tuesday, the 20th of December. So after the 20th of December, they pretty much took off for Christmas. So I think that's a nice
Really?
deal. I mean, 20th of December, Tuesday before Christmas. So they didn't work Wednesday, they didn't work Thursday, they didn't work Friday, Saturday and Sunday holidays, of course.
Sure.
So today I think they're off. So I think they're off the entire week. They're off till January 3rd when the new Congress comes into play. So I think I think we did very. I think they did very well there. This is from the Senate side, and let's see what the measures reported. Let's see, Senate
Well, didn't they
31.
pass that bill on Friday
Uh,
to keep the government going? They spent
Yes,
1.65.
the omnibus
Yeah,
bill, which is interesting. 1.7 trillion, right? So they listed that our revenues are around 1.4 trillion. So we're only $300 billion in the hole. This which is interesting because I thought that we were more than that. So I don't know where they're getting those revenues from, but I mean it's federal government, so they tally every dollar or every $1,000 or every $10,000.
I thought they're like 31 trillion in the hole.
They are a total. It's interesting how this all works because the one year that Clinton was president, they said we balanced the budget. Yes,
Yeah,
and in fact, they had a
they did.
surplus of the budget that
Right.
year.
93. Yeah.
That's right. That year, they had a surplus of the budget. That's
Yeah.
it. People thought, oh, they surplus the budget. Like we're not in debt. No, we just had a little extra money to play with. So immediately people were scrambling for that money to spend that money because it was a
Right.
surplus of budget. Instead of putting it towards the debt, it was kind of like,
Yeah.
well, we putting it towards the debt is like peeing in the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't make any difference.
Sure.
So why don't we just use that money up? So they did. They used the money up. So that's so
Really?
very
Well,
good.
see, people get confused about the debt and the deficit. Okay. See, the
Right.
debt is, you have to imagine, is the total amount due on your credit card. The deficit is the amount that's due this month on your credit card. Okay. So what happens is that the debt is like 31 trillion, but the deficit may only be, 500 billion or whatever it might be. So people are confused. Whatever it is, it's a big and bad number. And theoretically, though, as you know, Chris, the media is supposed to hold the government accountable for its actions. In today's world, the media doesn't do any of that. They don't hold the government accountable for anything. As a matter of fact, they're too busy parading the Kardashians around to hold anybody accountable for anything. And then when it comes to Congress, they're in and out like a jackrabbit. And so what you have is you basically have, maybe I should put this on Rumble. You have a runaway Congress, literally. You have a runaway Congress and a runaway administration who really don't operate in the best interest of the American public. They operate in the best interest of themselves, which is to get themselves reelected, no matter what the cost to the American public might be. And so what you have is you have what we have right now, a situation that's dire and bleak, but nobody's talking about it because the media doesn't want to talk about it. That would upset the Congress people running and paying for their ads. Plus, it doesn't get a lot of love and attention anyway. So the media doesn't cover it. Congress isn't going to say anything about it. And so you have what you have right now. You basically have a runaway economic rainstorm, storm that's going on that everybody's ignoring. What else do we have here?
So this
What
is
is this?
from the Treasury, right? So
Yeah.
this is 2017 to 2022, what they call
Mhm.
by debt limit class 1, which
Yeah,
I think, if I'm not mistaken, it says in millions. So
yeah.
basically you have 16 million, but I think it's 16 million millions. So I think
It's
that's
like
what it is.
billions. Yeah.
So although they have here, I think this might be per person or something. So I think so we're talking 24.6 million. I think that's per person debt held by the public. So I mean, you have a complete table, which I don't think you can use. You got
Oh,
to
do you have that debt clock you can show? Remember
Yes.
that? Uh,
Let me
See if you can
let me
flip
bring
over
that
to
up.
that.
Let me take this off
You know, because
while
the
I
thing is,
look at this.
the debt clock
Yeah.
shows only a partial problem because, like I said, what it doesn't take into account is the entitlement programs that are in debt, such as Medicare. We've been harping on
Yeah.
this show for years, but think about it. We harped on this show, and we have recordings of our shows, so they go back. We harped on cryptocurrency about a year ago being really
Yes.
bad. Okay, and the
Yes.
thing is, you can go back and look at our shows how we basically put the demonic on cryptocurrency and also Tesla at the same time. Tesla being overpriced, and this was last year.
Yeah.
Tesla being overpriced and cryptocurrency being a wild card. In other words, something no rational investor would invest in. A year
Well,
later, what
yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
Tesla went down like 60%. Not because of us, it's just because it was overinflated to begin with. And cryptocurrency, well, for the people that invested in it, lost it, too bad. I mean, you just listen to our show, and so you made a big mistake, and that's too bad. Good luck in getting the money back. All right,
Right.
so now we're bringing up other issues which will take place in the future. We could call this World Edition of the Future, and this is the debt and
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
deficit.
I
Okay,
messed up.
I'll bring it back.
Yeah, bring it back, please.
But by the way, it does not include Medicare going insolvent in about 5 years, and Social Security going insolvent in 10.
Right.
Doesn't include this. This is just our current operational debt. In other words,
Right.
just and what you see rolling through is the federal spending and the interest on the debt that just keeps accumulating. And notice it's in the trillions of dollars. Oh, here it is. They actually do have total U.S. debt, 93 trillion. So now they're adding in what they call the unfunded liabilities of Medicare and Social Security.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing is a very unfortunate financial situation, which Congress should be addressing by way of hearings every day. Really? Instead, they're doing this January 6th garbage, which frankly, it's 2 years old. It's over. It's very political. I mean, and frankly, no one really cares about it. I mean, the thing is, it will make no difference in your future, the January 6th garbage. This makes a difference in everybody's future. This
Well,
is this is your money at work, or at least how fast they're spending it.
well,
Okay,
they're
so
right. So they're also talking about the Speaker of the House.
McCarthy.
The Speaker of the House, well, McCarthy, right? But what they're saying is that the Democrats they're not going to vote for McCarthy, of course. That's not going to happen. But they're thinking that the Democrats will vote for Cheney. Will actually vote for
Cheney?
for Cheney because you do
Yeah, but
not have to be a member of the House to be the Speaker of the House. Someone
yeah,
looked that up. So basically, what happens is she's gone. She didn't get reelected,
she ain't get
which was
reelected
hello.
anyway.
And
Right, she's leaving.
so they're basically gonna vote her in, and that will that'll be what so now she'll be Speaker of the House, and
Seriously?
seriously, they're at one point they were thinking about doing that, and I think it's a bunch of bull crap. I don't think it's going to work.
I think so too. Remember
You
that the January 6th commission was a complete waste of time. And the thing is, the results, I've listened to it real carefully. I mean, if you're political, you hate Trump, you want to send him to jail anyway, so who cares? It's like,
well, that's what.
but in terms of substance and also on cross, and the media didn't serve well because they always cut him off when he says, I want you to go down to the Capitol. And then the next words out of his mouth was peacefully protest. The media always cuts that one off. And I'm a Democrat, and I totally object to how they handle this because they're basically, they're liars. I mean, it's just, and they're creating animosity along with the media in places that don't need to exist. and they do it by manipulation, and they manipulated everybody. And part of it is, Chris, it's real simple. All you do is cut off the last two things he said. All they do is say, I want you to go down to Congress and protest. But they cut off the word peaceful.
Right.
They just
really. Interestingly enough, and this is so basically, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but if I were a lawyer, I'd say, indict him. Go ahead, indict him. Okay, so he's indicted. Right. You bring him because you can indict. What did the one guy say? He can indict a ham sandwich. I mean, you can indict a ham sandwich. So you bring the guy in, and then you say, the first question is we are assuming, even though evidence was presented in the form of second and third party evidence, that Trump's intent was to have people go in and violently attack the Capitol, causing injury and death. That is what we're assuming that is. Now, Mr. Trump, we'll have you understand, was that your intent? No, it was never my intent to cause any bodily harm. If you listen to my speeches, you will see that I had no intent at all. Well, sir, what was the phrase when you used "fight like hell"? Well, Senator Schumer used that same phrase in front of the Supreme Court, and yet he was not put under indictment or anything else for that phrase, "fight like hell." Quote, "fight like hell." That's what he said. So I don't understand why my statement is being used like that area, because I meant it the same way Schumer meant it. How did Mr. Schumer say it? Now, also, I was threatened by the Speaker of the House that she was going to punch me in the nose if I set foot. And that's part of the documentary by her daughter.
That's technically an assault.
Yes, exactly. It's verbal assault. Right. So basically what happens is that it's not battery, but it is assault. Yeah. So basically what happens is that you have the Speaker of the House threatening the president with bodily harm. So why should he go down there, and do and give her the ability to actually perform that bodily harm? So in essence, he was saving her the ability to be able to do that. And Pelosi is really, really a smart person. After all, she said, "Merry Christmas and Happy Schwanza." In her, did you hear that? That she actually said, "Yeah." I have the YouTube video that actually has her saying, Happy Schwanza or Schwanza. She goes, and whatever else instead of Kwanzaa, Schwanza. So she does not have her faculties together, period. And then she's out there, doing whatever she needs to do, hiring her daughter for a documentary, which is nepotism, number one. Two is it's a conflict of interest on a contractor, number two, which she could actually go to jail for doing that without going out and trying to get competitive bids on and whatever else, according to federal law that Congress passed. So basically,
especially if the taxpayers paid for it, she should not have done that. Did the taxpayers pay for that?
Do not know. But bottom line is,
the real key,
go ahead.
If it's paid by private sources, it's probably okay. But if it's taxpayers' money, it's definitely not okay.
This is where it gets interesting.
The question is who paid for it.
Well, it's even further than that. So I was a federal government employee. Let's say I wanted to do something. Let's say I wanted to bring in somebody into the federal. Like I said, hey, we have this great. Let's say I wanted to do QuickBooks. I wanted to bring QuickBooks in. So I buy the software, right, out of my own money. And I bring it into the federal government. The minute I do that, the minute it enters federal government territory, it's considered to be under federal government rules. So even though I paid for it with my own money, I am in essence usurping the congressional ability to control the purse, because what happens is I am overriding their ability to do contracting for me to be able to do that. It's conflict of interest. It's against what they call Federal Acquisition Rules, FARs. It's against that. So therefore, she was actually committing a crime. And people will sit there and say, well, my gosh, that is hyperbole, Chris. And I said, geez, that's funny. You're taking fight like hell and you're indicting this guy basically as totally and completely responsible for all those people going into the Capitol. But yet I have hyperbole. It's interesting how that's all working. And the thing is that, and now they're saying that what's going to happen is the Republicans are going to take over and they're going to start having all these investigations against, against what's his name, Hunter Biden,
Hunter Biden,
and
which is also to me a waste of time.
it is,
You
it
know,
is, and the thing is,
part of it is that the government's responsibility is to govern the people,
right,
not become an investigatory body. If they want to investigate, turn it over to the Justice Department. Let them investigate. That's their job. You know, where you bring it to attorneys, let them do their job. Okay, the government is supposed to run the government, and we have some very serious issues out there right now. And I think what they need to do, Chris, is start prioritizing issues that need to be looked at. The economy is one of them. Well, this will create a lot of time. If you're going to solve the Social Security crisis, the best thing to do is solve it early rather than later, because it's actuarially determined into the future. And you may have to make some adjustments that are not favorable for people. Adjustment number one, increase the retirement age. You know, people are living longer, and that's creating a big problem. And yes, that's politically not fun to do, but it's the correct thing to do financially. Number two, you may have to increase the amount of money going into Social Security by lifting the cap. And the cap, only wealthy people know what the cap is. I found out my employees didn't even know there was a cap. And when I was working at my company, I always look forward to the day when my accountant said, well, you're above the cap now. And what means is that once you make a certain amount of money, let's say 140,000, it keeps changing. It's indexed for inflation. I think it's going up to 160 next year.
Yeah.
You don't pay into Social Security anymore. Yep. Chris, you don't pay into Social Security anymore. That's a 12.4% savings on your income. And I told my employees that, and they looked at me funny. I didn't know there was a cap. I said, dude, that's because you never made more than 140,000 a year in your life. Yeah. If you did, you would all know the cap. And here's the reason why it's not lifted. There's two reasons. Reason one, here's the explanation to the general public. Well, we'll never see the money back. Okay. That's kind of a fallacious argument, because here's the reality. If you die early, you're not going to see the money back. Social Security relies on people dying before their mortality. So there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways you're not going to see that money back. Number two, okay, it actually helps make the Social Security system more solvent if you lift the cap and allow wealthy people or people that make a lot of money to pay more into the Social Security system. And there are literally millions, like 3 million people or more, that actually would be paying into the system a huge amount of money, as opposed to going out and buying big houses and cars. Now, there's another thing they could do. And I don't like to tell people that, because it's really simple. If you have a S corporation and you have K-1 distributions from the S, you don't pay Social Security taxes or Medicare taxes on it. Now, that means you actually have to tax K-1 distributions, Chris. It is a not well-known play unless you're a business owner. By the way, that would hurt me tremendously, but it is what it is. Would it benefit the Social Security system? Absolutely. Imposing?
I mean, because I pay self-employment tax, which it goes into Social Security. You know, as a company.
The thing is, what you do is you impose the tax on distributions. So there is a fix to it, but notice it's tax, and which is not popular among the people that fund the government, which is the people that pay for the government, which are the rich people. So they don't like that idea, including congressmen. And in lower benefits. Now, David Walker brought this all up in the Simpson-Bowles Commission, and if they'd implement Social Security, it'd be sound. If they implement it today, you could actually extend Social Security who knows how long before it run into trouble. But think about it. If you say we're going to tax people, you're not going to get any votes. We're going to delay your benefits. You're not going to get any votes. It is a very unpopular position. So unfortunately, fiscal responsibility is unpopular in the United States of America. So
let's take a look at the fiscal data. So I have that on the screen. So this is how much the United States government spent this year, right? So this is October, which is the beginning of the fiscal year, October to November. $907 billion is what they spent, right? So almost $1 trillion. Now it's down 2%. It's down $15
I was
billion.
going to say it looks
You know,
not as bad.
so
Yeah.
it's not as much, $15 billion. But I mean, we can sit back and we can go, yeah, but what was happening during that time frame, right? But interestingly enough, we've spent this year alone, going into the last fiscal year, we spent 30 some $billion just for Ukraine.
Mhm.
$30 billion. I mean, and the
30
thing
billion.
is, people sit there and go, yeah, but in the density, you're the third largest country in the world, which is true, in population. So therefore, per person, it's still, you're not spending as much as Estonia. And it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. How much of this is what do you call it? Disposable income. Like, okay, oh, well, we're going to give $30 billion because we don't really need that $30 billion. Yes, we do need that $30 billion.
Mhm.
Thank you. We could use it. internally. This is a really good page. This is fiscaldata.treasury.gov. It explains
Yeah.
all the different situations, including the spending categories and the U.S. government spending by agency and by category. So you can see Department of Health and Human Services, that's $1 trillion right there. Social Security Administration, $1 trillion. Now this is outlays. This is benefits. This is for benefits.
Sure.
So all that. Department of the Treasury, over $1 trillion. And then we get to the Department of Defense, which is almost $1 trillion, $7.75 trillion is going. And then Department of Education. Now, see, I don't understand this at all. We're spending
Right.
$639 billion in the Department of Education. Where's that money going? Because I'll
Yeah.
tell you, it certainly is not going into the schools. I don't know where the
Well,
heck that's going.
okay. Let's stop right there, because this is, like I said, this is what Congress should be spending their time on. Department of Education. And this is a study I pulled from Hillsdale College, which is more a conservative college, but they did a study on education. And if the study is true, and this is why I'm saying you should have hearings on things like this.
Yeah.
If the study is true, here's what happened. The amount of administrators in schools increased about 70%. The amount of teachers in schools increased 8%. So what happened, and this has been my experience just dealing with education, is that a lot of that money, Chris, went to hire more administrative bureaucrats. It does not help the students at all. Instead, you have administrative bureaucrats.
Yep.
And in the
Yep.
school I just briefly taught, I actually quit because I had a kind of run-in with the administrator. It was real simple. I was teaching kids chess at middle school, and she came up to me and asked if I was a pedophile. I've never had anyone ask me that. I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about? Well,
Wow.
you're teaching middle school kids chess. I said, yeah, because my son's in middle school. I teach them along with that.
Yeah.
Well, we're concerned you might be a pedophile. I was kind of like, okay, that's great.
Nick,
Okay.
in North Carolina, at the DMV, they ask you that question, and they have a record if you are, and you say,
really?
no, I'm not.
Okay.
It's on the record at DMV. Check your DMV record. Check your DMV
Really?
database.
Okay, all right.
You
Well, the thing is, to me, it was a weird question. Then she came back again and asked me the same question. I said, look, you won't have to worry about it again because I quit. Goodbye. I don't need it. I was basically a volunteer. But I did do some thinking about it, Chris. And the real problem is, if a child came and said, hey, you did something to me, I lose my bar license. I lose my livelihood.
Yep.
For what? Being a volunteer? It wasn't worth the risk.
Yep.
And so if the kids didn't get educated, I go, well, the system doesn't lean itself toward that. It's more prosecutory. And I'm just not interested. In the meantime, who it was an administrator, and they had hired all these administrators at the school in Seattle, Washington. I'm going, what are they doing there? And the teachers, they were very upset because the teachers go, we're not allowed to teach. We're basically being administered to death. So what you're seeing on a lot of these expenses, if Hillsdale's study is correct, is your education dollars going to waste. Problem number one. Problem number two, and I hate it when I spend time with my grandkids, what are they being taught? Are they being taught what Alex Ross called the industry of the future? The answer is no. They're not. They're being taught things that are basically irrelevant to their future. And it's very sad. In other words, the biology, the chemistry, the health and health sciences are being ignored. And in place, I can't even tell you the classes that they're taking because they're, in my opinion, they're worthless. And so what you have is you have an education system in the United States of America that's backwards, really backwards, like 18th century, 19th century backwards. We need to have congressional hearings on our educational system, but they don't have it, Chris. And so again, it would be something that would be productive. You could probably eliminate a lot of those costs. And then you showed me this trillion in health and human services. Our health system is one of the worst in the world right now. It used to be one of the best, but now it's one of the worst and most expensive. And you can see that by the amount of people that died out of COVID-19. Could be because of education, which is basic, that isn't being delivered. Health education to elementary school kids isn't being delivered. And so you have a combination. So I see there probably 1.6 trillion of money that's being thrown down the toilet right now, and there's no congressional hearings about it.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that, as a Republican, having congressional hearings on the state of the education in the United States would be something that, if I were a federal government whatever representative, I'd sit down and I'd say, wait a minute, before we do anything, before we have any of these situations, every state in the union, they have a legislature, have committee hearings on the state of the education of that state, then bring it up to us, and we'll take a look at it from a state by state representation, and we'll figure out, okay, where do we need help and wherever we're doing. Because the problem is all they're doing is they're going to the data and saying, wow, Mississippi is the 49th state in education. Well, wait a minute. Let's take a look at Mississippi for a second. How many high-tech jobs are there in Mississippi? I don't know. Right. What's their main source? Agrarian. They do a lot of farm. They don't need a college education. They don't need to understand, like you say, they don't need to understand chemistry. They need to understand, I need to put this much feed in the hopper to be able to put this much acreage and seed. Okay. They learn by doing exactly what they need to do. So, and what you're saying is, I think, is financial aspects, is they're now having a financial literacy course in college, of all things. It shouldn't be in college. The thing was, when I was teaching math, I was teaching mathematics to adults. And the one time I said, okay, I'm going to teach you. They said, Chris, we don't understand how you could teach us anything that we don't already know. I said, it's not that you don't already know it. It's that you can use it to your best benefit. I said, for instance, when you're making out a check, this was when people made out checks. When you make out a check, you make out a check for $1,750, right? If you make out a check for that amount. And they said, right. And I said, well, what if I told you could put 1,750 and that's the exact same amount, yet you save how many words that you have to write on a check? And they go, that's not the same. I said, it is the same. 1,750 is the exact same as 1,750. You're saving 2 words and you're putting 1,700, which is the same as 1,700. And they go, no. And I said, yes. And I said, that was the first class. And they said, every single person that left that said, we've learned something today. We learned this. Yeah. I did that one time. Nick, I did it one time on a check. It was, they wanted 1,700. I put 1,700 and I gave it to the person. They said, that's not the same. I said, it is the same. And they said, I said, bring your manager out here. It is the same. It was for a down payment on a house. And they said, no, I mean, this was a mortgage person. And I said, no, bring out the manager. They brought out the manager. And I said, please tell your employee this is the same as 1,700. He took one look at it and he goes, it is the same as 1,700. She goes, but it's not, it's 1,700. He goes, that's the same as 1,700. Oh my God. I felt like saying, go back to school, preferably elementary, and find out exactly what's going on. These are the things that need to be taught.
Yeah. The thing is, when you say that, all right, this is my experience teaching chess at elementary, middle school, high school level. When I played chess, I learned in high school and became the number 10 player in the country back in high school because I learned how to play and became good at it. The myth was that you couldn't learn chess in middle school and elementary school because, frankly, your brain hadn't developed enough to do it. All right, that myth was destroyed when all of a sudden the chess teachers, which were not the teachers at school, because your teachers at school didn't know how to play chess. I'm just seriously the way it is. Okay, but what happened is the outside professional or players, United States Chess Federation players, went into the schools to teach elementary school kids. Guess what? The biggest group of students that are learning chess are in elementary school right now. 5,000 go to nationals every year. It's absolutely huge, Chris. And the myth was debunked that basically your elementary school kids can learn how to play chess. Okay, unlike the myth. Now, if they can play chess, which is not the easiest game in the world to learn, but not the hardest, they can also learn medical science, biology, law, all this other stuff at the elementary level. The problem is, problem number one, your teachers don't know these subjects to teach. Now, that's very sad, but it's true. A lot of them, they go in, they get their degree in education, but they don't know anything technically at all. In other words, they don't know pharmacological sciences, for example, and they don't know medical sciences. The outside world, though, does have a lot of people that do know these skills that could go in to teach. But then you have these teachers unions, we found out, that basically keep everybody out by making you certified. In other words, you have to go through their particular courses and their particular designations, and keeps the good teachers outside the elementary school. So what you have in the United States is what I call the dumbing down of America, which has been going on for years. And it needs to be reformed. The Chinese are different, though. The Chinese bring this education down to their elementary school kids, and they're learning, and they're basically, overtaking the United States in education. And you can see that by our results on PISA scores and all international scores. We're not even in the top 25 in the world right now in education. We're like we're not a third world country, but definitely not a first world country.
Well, that's because they don't want to. The way that I was taught when I took education courses in the Air Force, because I had to be certified as an instructor in order to teach. The one thing that they taught was conceptual aspects. Teach a concept and then show how the concept applies to real life. And if you do that, then all of a sudden it just makes a lot more sense from that standpoint. Mm-hmm. So let's take an example. If you put up my share screen for a second, let me show you something here. And I think this is interesting. Right now, the Ukrainians want Patriot missiles. They want Patriot missiles because they say this can shoot down whatever. The Patriot missile range right now, the Patriot missile range is 70 kilometers, which is about 42 miles. Okay. Yeah. Now I can make that in my head because 0.6 times 70. I got that. Okay. Really, but let's just do kilometers right now, and let's go around Kyiv. Right. Let's make a circle around Kyiv and say, okay, I'm going to make a circle around Kyiv. This is 70 kilometers, right about here. That's 70 kilometers. That's it. If there is anything outside that circle, that is outside the range of a Patriot missile. So people are sitting back going, they need Patriot missiles. They need them. Well, that's fine. But again, look what you're talking about. Unless you put a bunch of Patriot missiles at different sites to be able to overlap that circle, this is the range of a Patriot missile. So we're going to give them really high-tech stuff. This is really high-tech stuff. This is no kidding, one of our top-line missile defense systems. We're going to give this to them, and they're going to put it at Kyiv, and they're going to be able to cover that area around there. If there's a power plant outside that area, guess what I would do if I were a Russian? I'd sit there and I'd mark this 70 kilometer, and I'd say, hit right outside that area, Patriot will be useless. So unless you put the Patriots, like you start the Patriots, like, okay, I'm going to put one here, I'm going to put one here, so
you have to put them in overlapping circles.
So you have to put them overlapping circles in different areas.
Let me ask this question, because I'm not a subject matter expert on Patriot missiles. And I know there is somebody in the country that really knows this stuff. Yeah. But you never see them on TV, and Congress doesn't do a hearing about it. But to me, it's very interesting, Chris. The question number one I would ask, does it shoot down drones? Okay.
Yes.
Because, in other words, Really?
Yes,
Okay, because
yes,
the
it
thing
can.
is,
Yes. Well, what it does is
it
it
yeah,
does it through proximity explosions. Basically,
right.
when it gets close enough, it blows up. When it blows up, that shrapnel just
Yeah.
spreads everywhere,
But, but,
and
but but
it
it
can
will
shoot down a
be able
drone.
to. I mean, one of the key things that they're doing is they're sending in these crazy Iranian drones into Kiev. If
Right.
they shoot down drones and can identify and shoot down, I think it's certainly a worthy investment to
Yes.
defend Kiev using the Patriot missiles.
Now I'll tell you
Um,
what would be smarter.
yeah.
And I do not understand, and I guess I'll never understand exactly what's going on. Is these drones right now? I'm telling you how they're. This is all conjecture, but I have not heard one person say this. I'm going to say it as if it were a fact. Is they
Mhm.
work off GPS signals. That means that they work off a satellite GPS system
Sure.
that just like our cars or anything else does, right?
Right.
If the Ukrainians are so good at hacking, and they are good at hacking, hack the GPS system. Make it so that that drone, that 30 degrees, whatever minutes, blah, 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 now is an empty field. So that thing will now target an empty field and it'll go right to the empty field and blow up. And that's it. It won't
Yeah.
blow up anything that's of importance at all except the field. It's because you're not going to be able to shoot. You'll be able to shoot it down as long as it's within the range. And you're going to be able to, you can't get it down by radio interference because it doesn't care. So basically, you're talking about a V2 rocket, an improved V2 rocket. That's what you're talking about. So the only place to get them is either at the launching pads, you either get them at the launching pads or you get them at the location. And the reason I say this is because during World War II, there was the way that they bombed, the way the Germans bombed England was they would home in on radio signals. That's what they would do. They'd home in on radio signals, usually from spies or from whatever else. They would set up radio signals to say, okay, this is where to drop your bombs. What they did was they had what they call electromagnetic, they called them wizards, is what they called them. The Wizard War. As a matter of fact, I think that's the name of a book. And basically what they did was they set up higher power radio beacons in fields. And then what would happen is that the night bombing would occur. The Germans would go over and drop bombs in fields. And so it'd be a bunch of bomb craters in fields, not in cities. So basically by doing that, they were able to counter that. There are countermeasures to these drones. And I don't understand why. I guess maybe we just, we'd rather just spend the money and do the Patriot missiles. To me, I would take some good solid electronics people and intelligence people and whatever else, and I'd put them in Kiev, and I'd sit there and I'd say, okay, we're gonna go over here to Lutsk or to someplace out in the mountains somewhere,
Mhm.
and we're gonna set up a GPS receiver. And that
Right.
and that receiver transmitter, and that transmitter is just going to send out a false lat long, and that latitude longitude is going to now put that drone right in the middle of a freaking mountain, and that's going to be it. That drone is going to be useless. As a matter of
Right.
fact, I would take every power station coordinate and I would feed that into the false thing, and I would put that all over the country, and that thing would drones would just be flying into fields and mountains and wherever the hell you want them to fly into, and they don't. So it doesn't care because it doesn't care. It just has that GPS signal. As
Yeah, it
long
has
as
the
it's homed
GPS,
in on that
it's going
GPS
for that.
signal, it's done. So I mean,
Right.
we got smart people out there. I do not, and the Ukrainians are extremely good at
They are
hacking. As a matter of
extremely
fact,
good at drones. They have some of the best drone
yeah.
technology out
Well,
there.
they have DJI,
The-
which is actually
Yeah.
which are actually good drones. And they the thing is they have these long range. They got to be careful though because their drones are radio controlled up to a point. They got to be careful because the Russians are very good at hacking. And there was a gun that was, literally looked like a gun that was developed by a U.S. government contractor. If you aimed this gun at the drone, you could control that drone. So you could actually
Right.
make it land. You could shut it off. You could do whatever you wanted to do.
Now, a couple things since Sasha isn't here. What about the overtures that? Okay, a couple things I've seen that the Contra from Putin, and this is Hillsdale College again, a very conservative. I don't know why I keep reading their stuff, but it's very interesting. Number one, the argument that Putin made was all he wanted was assurances that Ukraine wouldn't join NATO, and that precipitated his madness, which may or may not be true because you don't know what's true when it comes over to Russia.
Right.
But then the latest was Putin goes, well, I'd like to sit down and talk about peace talks, but the Ukrainians refuse to discuss that. Why is it that you would not open lines to peace talks? What's wrong with that?
Well, the peace talks that Putin is referring to is his opening peace negotiations,
Sure.
which he already said these are the three things that you have to do. One is that the Donetsk and Luhansk regions are going to be Russian. That's going to be it. You're going to not join NATO, and we're not going to pay any reparations. And
right.
Basically, they said no. Luhansk and Donetsk, we're going to take those back. Number two is yeah, we are going to join NATO, and three is yeah, you are going to pay reparations.
Right.
And he goes, no, okay, we're done. Negotiations over, because you didn't come even halfway to my point of view. Halfway meaning what? Okay, we don't want Donetsk. Well, they're right, exactly. There is no halfway, and that's the problem. That's why there will never be any. And the thing is, Putin, other than the fact that it's a poor country at this point in time, there's been no bombs. I shouldn't say been no bombs. There's been a couple that have been dropped on Russian territory, but nobody really gives a crap about that. And the thing is that to me, it's kind of like, you put a couple, again, if you refer to the map, right, and you refer to Moscow versus Ukraine, right? So there's Moscow here, and if I were to just take a line between, let's say, this village right here, and I go to Moscow, that's 540 kilometers. Well, right now, the Ukrainians had the ability to launch against Moscow from their border, and they could hit Moscow. Now they're not going to do that because they don't want to cause angst in the West. But it's kind of like, all of a sudden, Putin looks out one day and sees a hole in the Kremlin, and he sits back and goes, wow, these guys are really serious. Or he gets really mad and says, okay, we're going to just go in and do scorched earth. What difference does it make? He's doing it now. The Ukrainians are sitting back going, how much worse can it get? I mean, you're threatening like crazy. Heck, we'll shove a couple of missiles up your ass in Moscow, and we'll see what happens there. If the situation exists where the U.S. gets pissed off, then the U.S. can broker some agreement with Moscow saying, hey, they want Luhansk and Donetsk back. But I'm going to tell you something, is that Biden is not exactly the bravest person in the world. I'm not trying to call him a coward, but close. The guy just doesn't have a set of anything. His ability to do things is just ridiculously. He doesn't do anything, nothing. I mean, in 2014, they gave up the region. I mean, Biden was part of the deal with Obama, giving up
the Crimea.
That's right. And by giving up the Crimea, basically, it told Putin.
Between that and Afghanistan, it opened up the door for Putin to go to his world conquest fanatical ideas, which he has. And it seems to me that we don't really have a good leader in Washington. I would think that if you had a good leader, you say, yes, I'm going to meet with Putin, and I don't have any problems telling him this is what we're going to do. But apparently, there's no direction in Washington, D.C. at all that I can see. The Ukrainian regions that they discussed, they're not Russian regions. Those are Ukrainian regions. But of course, then Crimea was a Ukrainian region.
Well, interestingly enough, and this is something else. When we talk about this, is going back to the map, is Moldova. Now, Moldova has a region, and it's interesting. If you take a look at Google Earth, you see this region right in here. Yeah. This region right in here is basically it is a Russian-controlled region. They have Russian troops in that region in Moldova, and so they're on the east, the western flank of this is Ukraine right here. This is the Ukrainian border right here in this area. So they're literally on the western border right here, Russian troops. Now they have not done any incursion into Russia at this point in time, or into Ukraine at this time. That's interesting. Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
we're talking about Russia and the Ukraine and everything. I did read that article about the peace talks that Putin wants, supposedly, and all of that. But I also saw that China is putting some weapons into Taiwan. So are we at all concerned about this as well? Because I did see that they apparently were flying some warplanes in that general direction. And I know that that's the other one that we sometimes talk about. And I was just wondering if that was a concern that folks had. And last but not least, I was watching a movie yesterday. You know, these movies can be very interesting because while they are fictional, they can be quite scary and quite realistic. And it was about some drones. I heard y'all talking about drones earlier. But these
Eye in the Sky? Is that?
No, this was a trying to think of the name of it. It was like one of the Black Widow series that is part of Black Mirror, the Black Mirror series. But it was about drones that are shaped like bees and stuff, and they literally were attacking people, burn into their heads, and it was having like a pandemic kind of situation. I was going like, this is technology that is actually real, that could actually happen, and that was scary, even though it was science fiction and all that. But it was like trained drones that could literally attack a human and could definitely cause mass casualties, which is what the particular episode was about.
So this was my prediction a while back. I'll make it again. Is that there will not be a war for Taiwan? They're not going to incur into Taiwan. What they're going to do is they're going to lay a siege. They're going to lay a naval and air siege over Taiwan, and they're going to, excuse me, they're going to just tease the Americans. They're going to sit there and say, "Okay, come on, let's go. If you want to go at it, you want to break this siege." Have at it, man. Come on, we'll take you on. And I'm telling you, as Biden is president, so the best time for them to do it would be right now. Because as Biden is president, Biden will not put one ship against a Chinese ship. He will not put one aircraft against a Chinese aircraft. The guy does not have it in him to do it. He's never had it in him to do it, and he's never going to have it in him to do it unless he's removed. And Harris wouldn't do it either. So basically, you got yourself two people in office right now that are so scared to do anything that would piss off somebody else. And I'm telling you, you need a president and you need a vice president in there. They're going to say, you put a siege on Taiwan, and we're going to sink your ships. We're going to sink them. We're going to put a torpedo up your carrier's ass, and it's going to be down. And you're going to be down a carrier, and now your national power projection is going to be down. So lay off, get off Taiwan, and move along. And that's what China is going to. That's what you're going to need with China.
One of Taiwan's biggest trading partners is actually mainland China.
Yes.
It's so funny that the thing is, there was this theory that, well, if they trade with you, the wars will be less likely, and apparently that's not true. But another problem that and I think this is brilliant by Putin, but not so much by the West, is that India and China both are trading very heavily with Russia. So the U.S. and Europe don't take the oil, but India and China, who need the oil, are taking the oil away from Russia, keeping the Russian economy afloat. So what I do, Chris, I just go check the hotels and the ruble. The Russian economy has not suffered very much, if at all, due to the West economic sanctions, at least as today. And this is going almost a year. And it's not because of us. There's another economy out there that we tend to forget about, and that's the East. India, which increased their trade with Russia, increased it. And we keep mum about it. They increased it 137%. And China, who is in lockstep with Russia regarding the issue in Ukraine. Yeah. So we have, unless you cut off the East from Russia, all our sanctions are basically worthless. In other words, it's been that way.
And you can
or worth less than we look at. Oh yeah, the West cut you off, but you forgot about the East. It's like you have the Wicked Witch of the West. Well, we're not coming to the party. But you got the Wicked Witch of the East who's playing, and their economies are large, so they can keep Russia afloat for quite some time.
Yeah, and that's what's happening with India. And India is producing.
So our economic sanctions are worthless.
So I was just going to point out the difference between this is mainland China, this is Taiwan. Well, take a look. I want you to take a look at this shelf here. This is the shelf. This is deep sea here, and the deep sea starts right around on the western side of China. So therefore, you got a little bit of a problem here with submarines, right? But here you have no problems with submarines whatsoever. So if the Chinese put any of their ships on this east side, man, you could put a sub down here and just kind of sit there, you know, and
Mhm.
you just wait until you get deep water and just, pound them, so
Yeah.
here you got a little bit of an issue, but not probably not much, but it would be highly detectable, I think, in this area. But the distance is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
The
it's not too
distance is
far.
200. It's still 207. It's about 120 to 150 miles between the shore here and Taiwan. Now, the thing that we don't, the interesting thing here is this, uh, which is this area of islands. This area of
Mhm.
islands right here, which is just a small area of islands, are very, very, they're committed. They are mainland China. They're owned by
Oh,
mainland
really?
China.
I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yeah, they have their they're you see how close they are
Penghu
to
County. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you
So
see how
Penghu County
close
is
they are.
actually part of mainland China then.
I mean, they're only what, 50 miles
Right.
from the center of Taiwan here.
Yeah.
So and they're caught in the middle, literally caught in the middle between China and Taiwan. And
Right.
they they kind of switch hats every once in a while, but basically they've already said, look, we owe our allegiance to mainland China.
Right.
So, we're close to Taiwan, and we have trade with them, and everything's okay, life is good. But there's still some issues as to whether or not they're going to put troops there, or if they already
Mhm.
have troops there, and
Yeah.
that could be a real big issue. So
Yeah.
lot of things
But
going on.
don't you think over time the if China's playing the long game, and they tend to want to do that, over time the issue with China and mainland China will resolve itself, since the disputes are mainly political economic. Remember, the thing is the history of Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong,
Oh
so it
yeah,
goes back quite some time. But at the same time, both systems have moved toward a more normal, stable system over a period of time. So I think without a belligerent, hostile situation, that over time the situation would basically repair itself. That
well,
would be
and
my thinking.
interestingly enough, so China has one and only one site outside of their country that has current that has troops, and that is in Djibouti, which is the Horn of
Djibouti, that's
Africa.
what I thought, it was in
That's
Djibouti.
right, Djibouti. Yeah, I mean that's it. At the capital of Djibouti is Djibouti. So I mean, interestingly enough, I mean that's what you have. So I mean, and what's this? This is a foothold within Africa. So now that they're in Djibouti, now they can move into different areas, including Uganda, South Sudan. They can move into Somalia. They
Hmm.
there's a lot, Ethiopia. There's a lot of areas where they can move, that they can make headway. And Ethiopia would be a perfect opportunity to do that, because Ethiopia is fighting right now up in this area. So they could provide cell phone towers and all kind of different things that are going on there.
Hmm. So that's their only outside military base.
That's it. That's it. The
Where
only outside.
we have 800 of them, from what I understand.
Well, we have a ton of them, but interestingly enough, one of them is a naval base that's located in Djibouti. And the Chinese have land that at one point in time was going to be adjacent to that base called Camp Lemonnier.
Hmm.
They used to call it Camp Lemonade, but basically what it is it's that camp is home for special operations groups, counterterrorism, intelligence. A lot of things are happening in that base in Djibouti, and you take a look at it from the map and look at where you're close to. Right? I mean, it's almost hilarious. You have Djibouti here, right across the way is Yemen.
Yeah, which is
Right?
a
The
disaster.
Gulf of Aden is right here, and oh geez, let's see, that goes to the Red Sea. And the Red Sea it goes all the way up here into Suez and Israel and East and all that stuff. So you can see where there's a lot of opportunities. It's strategically very, very good place to be.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of problem with piracy down in this area. So that was good. Somalia, Al-Shabaab headquarters, that type of thing is going on. Ethiopia, like I said, they're having problems up in this area. So, I mean, and, you're having problems in Yemen from, Al-Qaeda and the Al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula and all that stuff. This is your counterterrorism slot right here. Special operations groups right here. This is where all the special operations.
Where's Qatar from here?
So take a look. There it is. There's Qatar right there. Yep, on the other side of the peninsula. So I mean, this is and there's Kuwait here.
Right.
So that's So all this, and what's this is the Persian Gulf. And a lot of people mistake the Persian Gulf for the Red Sea area. They think Iran is over here. No, Iran is over here.
Iran's way over there.
This is where Iran is.
Mm-hmm.
Iran is right here. So, and interesting enough, when Iraq was causing all those problems with the Kuwait, and we went into Iraq took all their jets and flew them. Iran said, "Oh, we'll take all your jets." So Iraq took all their jets and flew them into Iran because they're getting shot down. And then at the end of the war, they said, "Can we have our jets back?" And Iran said, "What jets?" So it was.
Jets.
Well, remember, Iran and Iraq went into a war not so long ago that killed over a million people.
About 40 years ago.
Yeah, right.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris,
So go ahead.
really quickly, I just was curious. What did you think about the migrants getting dropped off at Kamala Harris's house? Because apparently they dropped them off on freezing Christmas Eve and all along those lines.
Yes, I know, Mark. I think the message is there. What are you going to do, Kamala, whatever the fork your name is? Are you gonna sit back and say, what are we going to do? And the thing is I understand New York City is basically saying we can't do this. We can't take these migrants. It's overloading our infrastructure. Really, tell that to the people of Texas, to the people of Arizona, to the people of El Paso, Texas, specifically, that they've been overwhelmed for how many years? And basically nobody's even cared. Why? Because it's in Texas. So nobody cares. It's a red state. Nobody gives a crap. Arizona used to be a red state. It's now purple. I don't know what the heck's going on there. So, I mean, all these things are happening. But yeah, Mark, I'm sorry. I just, what do you want to do? Do you want to send them to Rwanda, like the UK is doing? We can send them to Rwanda.
Her house in Washington D.C.
Yeah, well, it's not her house. I mean, it's the vice presidential. It's basically it's next to Department of Treasury is what it is. But I mean,
right.
It's that what?
Okay, so they dumped them in Washington D.C.
I forget what they even call it.
Hey, Chris, you're being sick and everything, and I did see that another pharmaceutical company has recalled blood pressure medicine over illness risk. So, we were all worried about COVID and things of that nature, but now we're having a blood pressure medicine is being recalled as well. So that was one of the things I saw. And Nick, you'll be glad to know the U.S. population is finally growing again, but not because Americans are having more kids. I don't know how that works, but apparently the population is growing again.
That's because we're letting more immigrants in.
Oh, is that what it is? That would make sense.
And they were sending them to Washington, D.C.
And an HBCU has its first police academy. So that means that more police will be coming from the HBCU communities. And of course, the winter storms is actually taking place.
Good. I am so happy about that, Mark, because I think that since, the devalued people, the people that are alienated, the people that are, whatever, I think they need to have more of a say. So put them as cops. Let them be cops. Let them deal with the crap that cops have to deal with every single day. I mean, there was a cop in this neighborhood, served out 5-6 years, and she left. And the reason she left is they have raised their retirement now. Instead of 20 years, you got to have 30 years. So it's like, she said, what, is this going to go up every year? Screw this. So she's now doing that, and she's very happy. She's doing investigations. She's loving life. Life is good, Shoot, are we over time here?
Yeah, we're sort of over time, so we probably should end the broadcast here and let the next show come on. Otherwise, we actually, what we do is we hog it for our show, which I think is coming out of Malaysia right now.
Sorry.
So we'll probably end it. And otherwise, what happens is, who's that guy? Sharif finds he can't get on. That's just the way it is.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Okay. Hey. Well, it was fun. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Chris, and we'll see you tomorrow on World Edition.
See you. Take care,
everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.